not have the ability to monitor or to have accurate information of who gets vested and what is vested. And it doesn't vest its own intermediaries or its own functionaries. State capacity effects in terms of targeting aid, entitlements, and others to the right people. It affects generating of revenue. Why is it important? Friends of Pakistan, throughout the world, like everyone says that, why don't you generate your own revenues before asking for aid for others? And I'll have something to say about that in the next few slides. And also about spending responsibility. So, given revenues coming from either aid or domestic resources, does state have the capacity to spend responsibility and to target to the right kind of people? I'll just give a very few brief and I'll be quick. Just to give you some brief figures. In terms of tax to GDP ratio, one measure of state capacity, fiscal capacity, Pakistan's ratio of 9.5% is far below even developing countries. 15% in developing countries, Pakistan is 9.5%, and it is declining over time. So, past 15 years, from 12.5% to roughly around 9%. Why? So again, the reason like customs and income tax and those taxes which have less to do with information monitoring and state capacity, which basically are taxes which are generated at choke points, ports. All the imports and exports have to go through choke points. Relatively easier, even given corruption, relatively easier for state to generate some revenue. Whereas when it comes to state income taxes, value-added taxes, those generate the right kind of pressure for state to observe, monitor, and to tax a part of those transactions. And our state has failed miserably in those, given those informationally intensive tax revenues. One tax that I am currently working on, property tax. Throughout the world, you take any work on property tax, and they will say that it's one of the easiest bases to tax, because the property exists out there. It is unlike income and wealth, which are very hard to observe, very easy to conceal. Property exists out there, so you can go and see. You can have satellite images. You can have. In theory, there should be absolutely no reason as to why property should not be able to be taxed. And still, Pakistan's average in terms of like property tax collection is 1/5 of the average, even far less than developing countries. And there are reasons, and I'm currently working in this area. So, tax to GDP ratio, again, I've said this point, is declining over this time. Again, the dimensions over which it is declining is because of those income tax and sales tax. Again, those areas where it requires, where it is more difficult for state to capture part of the transactions compared to customs revenue, which is easier. Within income tax also, the only sources where there is a slight change and falling, especially like post 2008, is not voluntary payments. Is basically audit based. Again, similarly, because voluntary compliance is very, very low, partly because people know that the state doesn't have the capacity to monitor, to capture, to impose any rents or any penalties. The only feasible way is audit based, and there again fiscal capacity is extremely big. I don't have the time to go into details. So why fiscal capacity? So how I define fiscal capacity is mostly based on Tim Bessler's. State's ability to accurately observe and monitor economic transactions and wealth on its territory and to take away some of the wealth income exchanged in the transaction for its own use. Why is it important? It's important. There's a recent hypothesis, a popular hypothesis in political economy, that fiscal capacity is important for state development or for economic growth, primarily because not because of what government does with this revenue, but because investment in fiscal capacity or the ability to tax revenue induces governments to provide the right kind of conditions for economic growth. The rule of law, property rights enforcement, and other reasons. So this is less related to Pakistan and a deeper argument as to why governments would not invest in fiscal capacity. I don't have the time to. It could be because of elite biases, because of informality of the economy, or because of alternative sources of revenue. And aid being one, it's relevant in case of like floods also. Does aid displace the incentive of the government to invest in fiscal capacity or to tax its own people? So there's some argument that the slogan of the American Revolution, no taxation without representation, maybe also work in the reverse. So maybe there can't be effective representation without the state also taxing its own people, because then the people hold the state accountable for what it does with this revenue. The other tenet as to why government would invest in fiscal capacity and lead to economic growth would be accountability to well-informed citizens. Here I don't have much time, but I would say that for historical reasons, political accountability channel in Pakistan is extremely weak. So we have elections, we have formal institutions, but again. And I want to focus on one aspect of that, and that's I'm close on this. There are other aspects of this, but I want to focus on how politics occurs at the local level. So there's some evidence that politics at the local level is organized around patron-client faction. So it's a patronage-based like politics. It's organized around patron-client factions, or dhadas as they're called in Punjab. And these local institutions are those people who organize these dhadas. They act as intermediaries. They perform some of these functions of the state that the state has not been performing. And one source of failure of accountability is the unelected nature of these intermediaries, these dhada organizers, because they are not accountable. And one change which local government system brought for all its sales and everything was to make these people elected and accountable. And I'll say more on it. That has the potential to change the fundamental nature of politics in Pakistan, because politics in Pakistan doesn't exist at the micro household level. At the micro level is in rural areas, it's those dhada organizers, and then they bargain with different candidates. So political parties don't exist at that level. So that, and to me, emphasizes the importance of local democracy. In Pakistan, there's a counter-cyclical pattern of local national democracy, in that whenever there is national democracy, there's civil elected representatives, they don't own local democracy because they consider them as rival sources of patronage. Whenever there is a military government, and even in British times, they always have local government system as a legitimizing strategy. I have written on it, and I don't have the time. But this to me holds the key to unlocking the accountability failure in Pakistan. So why is local democracy important in Pakistan in terms of like strengthening national democracy? Because it has the potential of increasing competition, increasing party-based nature of those local dhada organizations, and as per political economic theory, it generates more people, it increases the supply of people who have the right incentives to build their reputation in terms of governing responsibility or delivering on public provision. So traditionally, like whenever there is a debate or discussion on decentralization, it's always on service delivery and those administrative and other things. For me, the most important thing in local democracy, in decentralization, is its ability to recreate national democracy, or to re-establish national democracy on a party-based, competitive base, to lower the barriers of entry into politics in Pakistan, and to broaden the base of representation also. I'm doing some work with Asim Khwaja Forward and Ali Chima, and there we find, like I don't have the time to go into this, but there what we find broadly is that given the experience of the past 8 years in Pakistan, the post-2001 local government system, the design of institutions matters a huge lot. What incentives are created by the system? So what we are doing essentially is looking at the budgetary allocations and outcomes before and after decentralization. It's a different strategy for those who broadly find is that decentralization has resulted in increase in certain types of public provisions and not in others. So increase in development infrastructure, visible infrastructure, and not operational expenditure, not on things which may be equally important. And primarily what we find is the reasons are political. Reasons that have to do with the design of these institutions. So I'll end this on design issues. And based on work that I'm doing with Professor Roger Morrison of Chicago and Alichima, it is based on institutional design and a new local democratic system in Pakistan. What we suggest in our work is that it should be political party based for all sets of reasons that partly I've already mentioned. And it should be a parliamentary system rather than direct election of mayors. It should be a parliamentary system. I don't have the time to go into this also. And my last slide is we also suggest electoral voting mechanisms that, in our opinion, are based on both economic theory, political and economic theory, as well as on administrative feasibility, that we think have the potential to strengthen this accountability chain within the context of political party competition. Again, I don't have the time. For those who are interested, I'll refer them to this work. Lastly, I'll again like say the same thing. I'll repeat that the conventional approach to reconstruction in these districts is suboptimal given the reality of these districts, given the evidence that I showed you earlier. What we need is transformation, not just in these districts in particular because of those historic conditions, but also in general about investment in fiscal capacity, investment in state capacity and legitimacy, and especially recreating politics around more competitive, more accountable, political party based, and based on local democracy and national democracy. Thank you.